Hi there. Thank you for joining UnSCRIPted. I'm Angela Kashuba, Dean of the UNC Eshelman School of Pharmacy. We have an amazing community at the school with a single goal of solving the world's most pressing healthcare challenges. And I'm excited for you to hear unscripted stories from our faculty, staff, students, alumni, and partners at the school. Today, I have invited Sara Wasserman to join me. Sara is a PhD candidate at the school and also president of our graduate student organization. Thanks, Sara, for joining today.
Thank you so much.
So, Sara, you were raised in Asheville, I understand.
In Asheville, yeah. It was a wonderful place to grow up.
So talk about Asheville and about kind of your favorite experiences or your favorite memories there.
Absolutely. So, of course, the mountains, I think, is the first thing people think of when they think of Asheville if they've been there. We have these beautiful rolling mountains. They're pretty small. A lot of people that come from the West call them hills, which we try not to get offended about. But they're actually some of the oldest mountains in the world, and so I think just being there in that scenery, you get a sense of that kind of ancientness, and it really permeates the community and kind of grounds it in a really special environment. So I felt really privileged to grow up there, and I wanted to stay there. I think we chatted about that for undergrad, so I decided to go to college there as well.
Describe UNC Asheville for us.
Yes, it's a small community. It's a wonderful opportunity for an undergrad because they pretty much only have undergrads there, so you have a ton of one-on-one faculty interaction. All of my labs were taught by professors. There was no TAs in any of my bench learning, so I think that was really a great kind of first experience to get my hands on science and be exposed to it and interact with people that really loved science and wanted to have that kind of a career.
Tell me about your journey to pharmaceutical sciences.
So when I was in high school, towards the end, or I guess the beginning of my senior year, end of high school, I had just a normal eye infection, nothing crazy, got some prescription eye drops for it, and I had this escalating irritation and pain in my eyes. They got super inflamed to the point where I could hardly see. It got difficult to drive. It got difficult to complete coursework, and this was when I was applying for colleges and stuff, so it was just
oh my goodness,
a really, of course, negative experience, and I'm really grateful and lucky that it resolved. But it turned out that it was actually the medication itself that was causing that bevy of negative symptoms, and so I had a really great pharmacist actually in Asheville who kind of helped me look at all the ingredients and cross-reference what was in the drugs I was taking to try to figure out which ones had the additive that I was probably allergic to or having an adverse reaction to. And so then I was like, oh, pharmacists are really cool. So let me be a pharmacist or let me do some sort of pharmaceutical research. So that's probably how that got started.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And so tell me about that, thinking about, do I go towards a pharmacy degree? Do I do my PhD? Tell me about that thought process for you.
I'll be honest, I really struggled with it because I liked both a ton, to the point where I think at one point I probably emailed the school and was like, how can I do both? And I think that's because I knew pharmacists play such a crucial role in healthcare, and I had been exposed to that a lot. But I loved research so much. When I was doing undergrad research, it was always it keeps you up at night, and you can't stop thinking about it, and you have all these questions. And when you're in college, I think just starting out, you really don't have the time or the resources to answer any scientific questions. So I think I kind of got bit by the science bug, and I just couldn't let it go. So when I came down to it, I figured I couldn't live without some sort of research, so I had to do it.
I love that.
It was actually really hard to choose.
Okay. So tell me about your journey then to UNC Chapel Hill.
Yes, UNC, unsurprisingly, was always my first choice for any sort of graduate training, because again, I grew up with it, knowing it, but I did want to have a very unbiased, sort of selection, so I interviewed other places, and I really felt like our program was just so outstanding. one of the biggest things was that all of the graduate students were really happy, and it felt like they were genuinely happy. And honestly, that's pretty rare for graduate students, especially in PhD programs. So that stood out a lot. And of course, we have like world-class research. And then I think we have a really collaborative nature here too. I know there's never been a time that I've reached out to a researcher on campus that I've gotten anything but a really positive, helpful response. And people are always willing to show you new techniques or share some of their stuff and see if it can combine with yours to make an even better result or experiment. So that makes a big difference too, I think.
That's great. I felt that too when I came to UNC. They talk about the low stone walls at UNC. There's physically low stone walls around campus, but it really is a metaphor for very few silos.
Absolutely.
Here.
Yeah, we're really lucky in that way, I think, to have that kind of community.
Yeah. So how long have you been in Chapel Hill now?
Yeah, so this will be my 3rd year in the program. And yeah, time's flying for sure.
Yeah. And are you happy?
I'm definitely happy. It's definitely hard. It's definitely, I think, the hardest thing that I hope I'll do, but I think that's kind of how it should be to get a doctorate in a hard, like, bench science, you know?
Yeah.
That's what I anticipated.
Yeah.
I definitely wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah. You have a co-mentor in the School of Medicine.
Do, yes.
So can you talk about that relationship?
Yes. Oh, it's so awesome. So I'm lucky to be in the translational medicine certificate program as well, and so through that, I was connected with Dr. Liz Gelazzo in the School of Medicine, and she's just a really spectacular physician, geneticist, and scientist, and she's helped me really hone in my research to sort of, I guess, zoom in on what matters in a clinical perspective.
Yeah.
So when you do bench research, as you may know, especially in CBMC, the drug discovery leg of our program, it's really easy to get super focused on what works at the bench and forget that the goal is to put this into somebody and have a beneficial outcome. And so she really keeps me grounded, I think, in what the actual needs are, and helps me guide my research so that I know I'm not just making decisions to get like a paper or something, but really trying to set up a foundation so that if this research were to be taken forward, it would actually be useful. She's awesome though.
Yeah.
She's great.
No, that's terrific. I love the pairing of a basic scientist with a clinical scientist. It sounds like that just makes your experience so much more robust.
Definitely enriched it,
Yeah, very good. Can you talk a little bit about, you mentioned the translational program, certificate program you were in. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So it's an opportunity on campus for bench scientists who want to have that additional sort of awareness of translational methods, and I think have a deeper understanding of what it takes to really translate a bench finding to a useful clinical outcome or clinical shift. And that's something that I think, and I think the training program would agree, is really sort of understudied and we're undertrained for as bench scientists. Speaking of silos, that's often a really strong distinction. But of course, you know, the pathway from bench to bedside, as we always say, it's a line. And so I think to have more interconnection between the people who are initially putting forth ideas that might take shape into something useful and the people who know exactly what needs to be done in order to get a better outcome can only strengthen the way that we make medicine.
Has there been any learnings or anything surprising for you as you sort of ventured into the clinical side?
You know, again, one of the reasons I struggled not being a pharmacist is because I really do love client interaction. And so it's funny how when I shadow with my mentor and I'm exposed to patients who are dealing with rare diseases who don't have any tractable treatments and it's just manage the symptoms, that feels so unfair in a very human way. I think that was a really standout finding to me, just that knowledge, I guess.
Yeah, so that makes it real.
Yeah.
And we say here at the school, everything we do begins and ends with the patient in mind. So you being able to see the patient and take that back, that sounds really motivating and focusing for you.
Motivating.
No, I love that. You are president of our graduate student organization.
Yes, I am.
So speaking of motivation, can you talk a little bit about why you wanted to do that and talk a little bit about that leadership role and what your goals are for your time.
So yeah, as I mentioned, I think our student community was a huge factor in me wanting to come here. And I think I just look back on my first couple of years and I feel so lucky to have the student mentors that I've had, and so it feels not necessary, but it's like a responsibility that I want to kind of make sure that that environment continues and give new incoming students the support they need to continue that legacy.
Can you talk about some of the ideas that you have around
absolutely.
Connection?
So we have a small budget, and just being able to provide free food for PhDs when we can, kind of a respite and a chance to speak to students that are in other programs, because we have 4 legs that are pretty diverse in what we do, but we're all having a similar training experience in a lot of ways. So I think programs that we're putting on, we also try to really get involvement from all 4 of our PhD divisions in order to improve everybody's connectivity.
Yeah, that's great. So tell me about your career aspirations as you've been going through your program and thinking about patient care and impact. What would you like to do next? What is in the future for you?
I know a big priority for me is going to be continuing to work with some of the newer technologies, like CRISPR-derived technologies, like gene therapy, sort of broadly the technologies we have that are evolving in that space. Because it's so exciting, and again, I feel like once you've played with those things, it's really hard to stop and stop questioning kind of where they'll lead us next and who's going to come up with the next sort of ingenious way to make them better, more applicable. So whether that takes place in a biotech, at a larger pharmaceutical company, or even in academia, I'm not sure, but I think towards the end I'll kind of know when I see what the options are. But yeah, wherever gives me the opportunity to, I think, do that and keep patients in mind, that'll be the right fit.
That's great. Your PI is director of our new CRISPR facility. So can you talk about the CRISPR facility a little bit and what having that facility has meant to you, to the division, to the school, even to the university?
Absolutely. So it's really exciting to have such a new, novel, sort of first-class facility, and it's right upstairs from where I work. So actually, a lot of times I'll run up to run different assays, and I purposefully take the route so I can kind of walk by all the robot arms and just see the whole thing. But that is a really exciting, new, powerful technique that I think our campus will be able to use in order to ask useful questions that we really haven't had the capacity to ask before.
And that, speaking of low stone walls, that was a really wonderful partnership between the pharmacy school and one of our alums, along with the Eshelman Institute for Innovation, the Lineberger Cancer Center, the School of Medicine. So that's a lot of people coming together to make something really impactful happen.
Absolutely. And I think it shows in the diversity of applications that it's already having. We see people from a lot of different areas on campus asking, or at least I've heard Nate speak about how these people will come with different ideas.
So let's get back to fun.
Yes.
And so if you have any downtime, what do you like to do?
Yes. So I read a lot. I try to read really diverse things because, again, I think science is great. Obviously, I love science, but one can get a little too much science brain, so I think it's kind of nice to be exposed to different ideas.
So tell me about what you like to read, or what you read most recently.
So it's funny, I think it's kind of ironic reading this while in a PhD, but one book I'm reading right now is called How to Do Nothing.
Okay.
And
I love that.
It's an interesting dismantlement of, I think, how our environments influence the way that we prioritize our time and we prioritize the things that are taking place in our life. So again, it's great because it's so different from what I'm doing and what I'm hearing and thinking about most of the time, but it's really kind of helped me center, and I think it's just a good outlet.
I love that. Sometimes doing nothing is the best rejuvenating thing to do, to just give everything a rest.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to thank you so much for spending some time with me today.
Absolutely.
And I want to thank you as well for joining us and hearing about Sara and her journey and some of the work that she's doing here at the school. We love sharing stories of those who are at the school and who make us most excellent. And so I hope you'll join us for the next episode of UnSCRIPted, where we are having conversations with people who are advancing medicine for life. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.